All right. Today we're doing a deep dive into something pretty specific. The world of wholesale merchants in wood and construction materials.
Yeah, I gotta love those niche
I
markets.
know, right?
Yeah.
But are we talking like handcrafted furniture here or more like building skyscrapers?
Hmm.
What exactly is this scale?
Think much bigger, actually. This isn't your local lumberyard. We're talking about those massive trades that are connecting the folks out there harvesting timber with the folks who are building entire housing developments.
Oh, wow. Okay. So high stakes, high reward kind of stuff.
Yeah, you got it. Potentially very, very lucrative.
Lucrative. Okay. I'm definitely intrigued now. I did notice this RoleCatcher guide uses some pretty serious jargon, though.
Mm.
Investigating, concluding trades.
Mm.
It's got to be more than just like connecting the dots, right?
Oh, absolutely. You're catching on. It's about being the ultimate insider, you know?
Okay.
Imagine knowing the entire lumber market, like just knowing it completely, like what's in demand, what the pricing games are, even being able to predict what's going to be trending next year.
Okay. Yeah.
You'd be surprised at how much money someone with that kind of knowledge can make.
Really?
Oh, yeah. We're talking like potentially six-figure salaries.
Uh-huh.
And for those at the very top of the game, even hitting seven figures.
Right. So that is what I call building a future, literally. But walk me through this. Say I'm fresh out of college. What does climbing that lumber ladder even look like?
Well, you're definitely not going to waltz in on day one and start negotiating million-dollar deals right off the bat.
Right.
This RoleCatcher guide, it lays out a pretty clear progression. So you would be starting out as an entry-level wholesale merchant and basically just absorbing information like a sponge, understanding your client's needs. I mean, you got to be able to tell your oak from your maple, obviously.
Right. Of course, the basics.
Exactly.
So it's kind of like an apprenticeship almost, like learning a trade itself, just on the business side.
Yeah, exactly. You're building a network, earning your stripes, and then as you gain experience, that's when they start giving you more responsibility,
Yeah.
negotiating those big deals, managing inventory, maybe even leading a team. And this guide, it actually gives examples of what a typical day looks like at each level.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's really cool.
So they actually get into the nitty-gritty like that.
Oh,
Okay.
do.
But let's be real. This does not sound like a job for someone who, like, hates phone calls or gets stressed out easily.
We're telling me this RoleCatcher guide does not sugarcoat it at all. Like, you need to be adaptable, you have to be able to handle stress, you have to be a master negotiator, because we're talking about huge sums of money, super tight deadlines, and a market that shifts faster than, I don't know, a lumberjack on roller skates.
Okay, yeah. So quick thinking and being organized is pretty much non-negotiable.
Pretty much.
But I did notice this guide also mentions transferable skills that can actually give someone an advantage.
Oh, definitely, for sure.
So what do they say about that?
Well, just think about it, right? Strong communication, persuasion, even just being like a voracious reader. These are all things that lay the foundation for success as a wholesale merchant because you're constantly learning, analyzing, and then you have to explain those insights to other people in a way that makes them actually want to do business with you.
So even if someone's coming from a completely different field, they might have some hidden talents that would actually make them kind of a natural at this.
Oh, 100%. Like maybe they were a teacher who was just amazing at explaining complex topics to people in a very clear and concise way. Or maybe they were like a project manager who's used to juggling a million deadlines and making sure all their clients are happy.
Totally.
Like those skills absolutely translate.
That's so true. It's like they always say, every problem's a nail if you're holding a hammer.
Right.
But in this case, the hammer is actually knowledge of the lumber market,
Mm-hmm.
which is way less dangerous.
Way less dangerous.
Speaking of knowledge, this guide really emphasizes like continuous learning.
Oh, for sure.
Why is that so important in this specific field?
Well, I mean, technology changes constantly. The global market, it's always fluctuating. New trends pop up faster than you can say sustainable bamboo flooring.
Yeah.
So to really stay ahead of the game, you have to be a lifelong learner. And this guide really highlights that. Successful wholesale merchants, they're always researching, attending industry events. They're basically like sponges for information about anything and everything that's related to wood and construction materials.
So it sounds like you got to be okay with a little bit of chaos and a lot of reading material,
Yeah.
but in a way that's kind of exciting, right?
Right.
You're never bored.
You're never bored.
So for our listeners out there who are now like eyeing their bookshelf, wondering if they can build a career out of it,
Yeah.
what kind of resources does this RoleCatcher guide actually offer? They wouldn't just like leave us hanging, would they?
Oh, absolutely not. They actually go above and beyond.
Okay, good.
Yeah, they have links to industry giants like, the World Trade Organization, which is perfect if you really want to understand those global forces that are at play in the lumber trade.
Hmm.
But then they also have links to organizations that honestly at first glance seem totally unrelated.
Okay, now you've got me curious. Give me an example. Like, what kind of curveball are we talking about here?
So they link to the International Food Service Manufacturers Association, also known as IFMA.
IFMA, okay.
And you might be thinking, wait a minute, food service, what does that have to do with lumber? But it's actually a brilliant illustration of just how interconnected all these industries really
Well,
are.
yeah, you're gonna have to connect the dots for me on that one.
Okay, so think about restaurants, right?
Okay.
They need tables, chairs, all those trendy little wooden boards they use to serve appetizers these days.
Oh, yeah.
All that lumber has to come from somewhere.
It
Right. So a savvy wholesale merchant, someone who's really got their finger on the pulse of the food service industry, they would be able to anticipate those needs, maybe even suggest new and innovative wood products to their clients.
Oh, that's a great point. It's like they say everything's connected, but in this case, it's literal supply chains.
Exactly.
That's so cool. Are there any other kind of surprising links in this guide that you think our listeners should check out?
Oh, yeah, for sure. They link to groups like the Institute of Packaging Professionals and the World Packaging Organization. And again, wood products are everywhere, including packaging. So really understanding those trends, it can give a wholesale merchant a serious, serious edge.
It's all about seeing the forest for the trees, or maybe trees for the shipping pallets in this case.
Exactly. And speaking of different perspectives, this RoleCatcher guide also digs into some alternative job titles, which I thought was really interesting.
Yeah.
Because it turns out wholesale merchant in wood and construction materials is not the only way to describe this line of work.
Oh, really? Okay, so what other kinds of titles are we talking about here? Is it like timber tycoon, or is it something a little more official?
Well, they did mention commodity broker, which makes sense because at its core, lumber is a commodity that's traded. But then they also had non-vessel operating common carrier, which sounds a little intimidating.
Yeah, that one definitely requires some further explanation. It sounds vaguely nautical, but also kind of bureaucratic.
Right, so basically a non-vessel operating common carrier, or NVOCC, they act as kind of like a middleman in the shipping process, especially for goods that are transported by sea. So they don't own the ships themselves, but they arrange for the transportation, they handle the logistics, they make sure that lumber gets from point A to point B.
So if you're a wholesale merchant who also understands all the ins and outs of shipping, you'd be like a super valuable asset.
Oh, yeah.
Because you're not just selling wood, you're selling that whole smooth, streamlined process.
Exactly, and that can make all the difference in a global market that's this competitive. Now, speaking of valuable skills, this guide goes really deep on the specific abilities you need to succeed in this career.
Oh, yeah. The skills to pay the bills section.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was skimming through that earlier. They do not mess around.
Yeah, they don't.
It's a lot more than just knowing the difference between pine and spruce.
Right. And of course, communication, negotiation skills, those are crucial. But they also emphasize the importance of financial literacy.
Oh, go
So
ahead.
think like assess supplier risks, comprehend financial business terminology, that kind of thing.
Oh, wow. So you're not just selling a product, you're managing this whole complex web of finances and logistics and market trends. It's like running your own little mini empire.
Exactly. And here's what I thought was really interesting too. They list things like identify new business opportunities and monitor international market performance. Which tells me they're looking for people who are not content with just maintaining the status quo. They want someone who's always thinking 3 steps ahead, someone who's constantly looking for ways to innovate and grow the business.
Someone who can like spot a trend before it even becomes a meme, basically.
Exactly.
Yeah, that kind of proactive mindset, that's got to be essential in an industry as dynamic as this one.
It's make it or break it. It really is. This is not a field where you can just coast on autopilot. You have to be willing to put in the work to stay ahead of the curve. You have to embrace that ever-changing nature of the global lumber market.
Okay, so we've established this is not exactly a walk in the park,
Mm-hmm.
but every job has its downsides, right?
Mm-hmm.
What does this RoleCatcher guide have to say about the potential challenges of this career path? Because they're usually pretty upfront about that kind of thing. You're not wrong there. This RoleCatcher guide definitely doesn't shy away from the downsides. They mention a highly competitive industry, fluctuating market conditions. It sounds like you need a strong stomach for risk and uncertainty, that's for sure.
Yeah. That's the name of the game in this business, especially in a global market as complex as lumber. I mean, think about it. Everything from weather patterns to international trade agreements can impact those prices.
Oh, for sure.
You could be riding high one minute and then the next minute you're like navigating a shortage.
Right. Definitely not a job for someone who loves predictability.
No.
But that constant change also kind of creates opportunities for innovation, right? Like, if you can anticipate those shifts, you're already ahead of the curve.
Precisely. This guide really hammers home the fact that the most successful wholesale merchants, they're not just reacting to the market, they are actively shaping it.
Oh, wow. Okay.
They're the ones who are spotting the trends before anybody else, finding creative ways to connect buyers and sellers. Maybe they're even like proposing entirely new wood products or applications.
So you're not just riding the wave, you're learning to surf.
Mhm.
Maybe even build your own surf unit while you're at it.
Exactly. And this guide gives you the tools to do it too. They have a fantastic FAQ section that addresses all sorts of really practical questions like how to actually investigate potential buyers and suppliers, how to manage inventory, how to stay competitive in a market that is cutthroat. They even give like real world examples of how a wholesale merchant might navigate a tricky negotiation or secure a major deal.
It's almost like having a seasoned mentor in your back pocket. Speaking of mentorship, what would you say is like the most valuable piece of advice this guide offers someone who might be considering this career path?
For me, it all boils down to that emphasis on continuous learning, whether it's staying updated on market trends, honing your negotiation skills, or just, even just expanding your network. The learning never really stops in this field.
It really is a career for lifelong learners, that's for sure. But that's also what makes it kind of exciting, right? You're constantly evolving and adapting, pushing yourself to stay ahead of the curve.
Couldn't have said it better myself. So to our listener who's been soaking up all this information, we've covered a lot of ground today, from the day-to-day realities of what it actually looks like to be a wholesale merchant to those broader trends that are shaping the future of the entire lumber industry. But if we were to leave you with one final thought.
It would be this.
Yeah.
Don't limit your thinking. This guide focused on wood, which, yes, it'll always be an essential building material, but the future is wide open. What about the rise of sustainable alternatives like bamboo or engineered wood products? How will those innovations impact the role of the wholesale merchant?
Those are the questions to ponder. Who knows? Maybe that's where the next lumber empire will be built.
Ooh, I like it. All right, well, on that note, this has been an incredibly insightful deep dive. Thanks to our expert for breaking it all down and to our listeners for joining us. Until next time.